What does it really mean to evolve financially, professionally, and personally throughout life's many transitions? My guest today, Nancy Taylor, has lived that evolution in a way that will truly resonate with so many of us in midlife. With over 30 years of experience as a school psychologist, administrator, and now educational advocate and coach, Nancy has built a career rooted in helping children and families thrive. But just as importantly, she's made tough decisions to step away from roles that didn't serve her health or her joy, bravely reinventing her professional life to align with her values. In this conversation, Nancy shares her reflections on money, the lessons about work and integrity she absorbed from her parents, and how she and her husband learned to balance ambition with family commitments. She opens up about the exhaustion that came with climbing the ladder, why she ultimately chose autonomy and flexibility, and how she defines success today, not by titles or possessions, but by meaningful impact, time with loved ones, and space to nurture her own well-being. If you're a woman in midlife contemplating your own next chapter, whether that's a career change, retirement, or reclaiming your time, Nancy's story will inspire you to see new possibilities and remind you that it's never too late to evolve into a life that feels both purposeful and sustainable. Please listen.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
Welcome, Nancy, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you and get to talk in this format.
Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I will start, as I always do, with the question, Nancy, what was money like in your family growing up?
For those listening, in full transparency, this isn't the first time I've heard Laura ask this question because we found each other in a group of women and have had lots of opportunities to have long conversations. And as I thought about preparing for this podcast, a big word for me is evolve, that I think is going to be, I hope, a theme through what I say today. So when I first thought about this question, I thought about the fact that I came from a family that financially didn't have a lot of money. And that seemed really to stand out to me but we didn't have food insecurity. We always had a nice warm home. I always had cute shoes from Stride Right.
Oh my God.
And Altiers was the store where I grew up. And so I don't think that and I think now we know that the cost of living differences when we were growing up were just kind of different in terms of people could live more comfortably on less money. But we didn't have a lot, and we didn't have fancy vacations, and I always worked. But when I look back on it, there was so much of value that was going on that wasn't necessarily just about money. I had a wonderful extended family. I had lots of fun experiences in life. I learned how to do things. I still look at a large plastic container and decide, do I have a use for it before I throw it out? And I don't think that I don't really feel like I suffered that much. Like I feel like there were times, I think it shaped decisions that I've made, and there may have been times in my life, and that's why that word evolve is in there, where it put me in a position of making different decisions, but I'm not sure that's where I'm at now.
Thank you. Even from that one answer, Nancy, so much comes up. First thing I've been thinking about is, again, how comparison is a human trait and instinct. So nowadays, I'm not so sure that it's necessarily so much more expensive to live, but we're aware of the great amount of wealth that's out there. And so in comparison, it's hard to feel that we're wealthy. And so my question to you is, were you aware, now you're looking back and you're reflecting, but at the time, were you surrounded by people that had more wealth than you? So you were aware of having less than others?
Not relative, perhaps some, but not to the extent of, I grew up in a rural community in Western New York. And so I wasn't in Manhattan or something where
Right.
I was perhaps seeing more difference. But when I went to college is when it became very apparent to me when I of course worked multiple jobs through college to help pay for it and to make money to do the things that I wanted to do, have the clothes I wanted. And the girl next to me had a picture on her door of this was in the 80s, of a $250 coat that she wanted and that said, "Mommy, buy me this," before. And that certainly was not my experience. But now I do have nicer things. And sometimes what I find is having made those investments, like I don't need to make another one. I keep them. I have a coat, beautiful wool coat that I bought. I think I wore in both my pregnancies, and my oldest child is 32, and it still looks lovely.
No shoulder pads that you had to take out?
Oh no, maybe it's a little younger than I thought it was, but I've never been someone who has been motivated by, I'm fascinated by the Birkin culture. It's not something I've ever been interested in spending the money on. We could all make choices and buy things and then not have something else, but it's not something that attracts me.
Thank you. So I hear, of course, that you went to college. Was education something you always knew would be emphasized?
Yeah, that's certainly my parents, neither of them had the opportunity to go to college, and it was very
Interesting.
much sort of not even a given, not even a question. That was what we were preparing for. I was a good student and have always loved learning. So the opportunity, I don't think I ever thought about not going to college.
So you and your siblings were first generation college?
Yes, I had other relatives, aunts and uncles who'd had that opportunity, but my parents had not. And they were both in their own way very self-made. My father ran his own business and he worked in the trades. He taught himself how to do all those things. He was probably not quite as rough around the edges as some of the other people in that work. And I meet a lot of lovely people who I always love when they come to my home now. I sit and visit with them. And my mother always had lots of responsible positions. She was at an early age, or in her 20s, worked in a pharmacy. And when she was working in a pharmacy, she was doing things that a pharmacist would do today. She was an executive secretary for a company. And then probably the week she died, was still working on my dad's books. So we were very much taught the value of work,
Mm.
and we were taught to, I think, to do things well is the other thing. We were taught to do things well. Those are values that have, my mother, whenever we had to do a speech in school, would say, you write it up nicely and you put it in a folder and you hold the folder when you speak. I think that's something that's carried through. I have notes prepared for this because when you do something, you prepare.
I love that. And I also hear in that your mother was encouraging you to take pride in your work, that there's no task that's too little or too negligible to do well and to prepare for.
Yes, I'm not sure it was necessarily pride that you were supposed to be walking around full of yourself after you accomplished it, but maybe more to feel the joy and pleasure of a job well done, and that there was fun to be had from working and doing things well, doing things for others, bringing others joy.
I love that. And I just want to say to our listeners, because Nancy, I do know you well, you are someone who doesn't even think twice about doing something for others and lending a hand and lending words of encouragement. So something I very
That's
much.
so nice. My mother would be so proud to hear that.
So Nancy, before we move on, how did you pay for college?
I received a generous scholarship because of my academic success, and I received financial aid because of my parents' income level, and I worked and I took out loans. I had the responsibility of buying my own books and my spending money and my toiletries. I took care of myself really once I went to college. Now, I don't want to say my parents didn't help because they certainly did. There were things that were paid for, but I was pretty financially independent in managing that. I did for graduate school, the first time I went to graduate school, I did live at home. So my parents paid for, supported me and gave me a car to use at that point in time, but I took out more loans and I worked hard and paid them. I paid them back early, honestly. The interest rate was high. I didn't like that, so I committed to it. And we've always lived pretty well within our means, or at least in a plan. There was a lot of home equity loans. Remember at a time that we were fixing up houses and moving houses, and it was a good way to, there's always kind of a financial plan for that.
So I'm hearing that you and now you and your husband are very aware of your finances and very involved in making sure that you're being responsible with your money, which is not something I always hear. And I feel like that's tied to the lesson that you got from your parents and your mother specifically. I'm imagining sort of an open folder with the numbers and understanding how much is the interest expense and what impact that has. And so how you want to use your money and allocate it between your different needs. So do you feel like that was true about you at a young age?
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't choose a career that paid a lot. So I worked in schools, and my husband I married young and we had children young. My husband got a PhD in a field that he didn't end up working in. So he kind of had to build up. He works in tech. He has a PhD in medieval studies.
Interesting.
And he has parlayed that, though. There's a lot of language in that. There's a lot of logic in that field. And he's also very mathematically gifted. So he has parlayed that into using his communication and his logic skills to be a real benefit at work. But we chose to have a family young for a variety of reasons. And we didn't have a lot. So we had to be careful. I was a good bargain shopper. We bought what we needed. We might have bought an LL Bean jacket for a child, but the second child wore it too. And part of the reason why for me the school continued to be compelling was the schoolwork continued to be compelling in addition to liking what I was doing. Was that it allowed me to have summers with my children and with my husband and I sort of working together on schedules. And as you become successful in jobs, not school so much, but other jobs, you have a little bit of flexibility sometimes on start time to be available for our children. I think that's why I'm saying money is a piece, but money has not always been the driver of the decisions because the acquisition of things was not as important as the balance of how we want to spend our time.
Exactly. As I often say, we have, in my mind, three scarce resources and money, time, and energy. And we are always choosing the trade-offs between the three. Thanks for sharing how you've made your decisions. I'm curious how you made the decision. If you could share with our listeners what you meant by you first started to work in schools, what exactly were you doing? And I feel like, did that choose you? Did you?
It kind of chose me. I graduated college and I had not thought enough ahead about what I was going to do. And I found other work that I hated. There was a new program in school psychology starting up in my local area. And so I pitched myself and they were kind enough to give me a scholarship and let me start late. So I worked mighty hard to get through on time. taking an overload of courses to make that happen, which is always easy when you're young and strong and single.
Yes.
But I was also someone who was always drawn to children. I always had younger cousins that I first started out taking care of. I did a ton of babysitting. I taught Sunday school. I was always very drawn to children. And I was also very drawn to complexity of ideas. And school psychology really allows for that in a way that was compelling to me because I was doing diagnostics. I was figuring out what was going on with kids and what interventions would work for them that would solve things. And so the work that I now do privately is really such an extension both of the work first as a school psychologist, and then as I looked for ways to have more impact, I became a leader in schools. I took an administrative position so that I had a chance to sort of have a larger impact. So the benefit of, I was always the kind of person who was stepping back and looking and thinking, what's going on here? What's the hidden agenda here? Does this actually work? If this doesn't work, what should we be doing? So I continued on that path, but it was exhausting. And I continued to kind of pursue what I consider the American dream and rise in the ranks. And I found it wasn't good for me. My blood pressure was very high. I wasn't enjoying it. So I made the decision, and I think there's people who are wonderful at it. They're wired differently than I am, and there's many people who do a beautiful job of it. But when I left being a school psychologist, one of the Spanish teachers came up to me, Barbara. I was thinking about her this morning, and she said to me, "I'm really mad at you." And I was like, "Why?" And she's, "Because you're so good with the kids." And I looked at her and I was thinking like, dude, it's my life. I get to pick. Full circle, I have come back to the kids, I think, more in a way that, and I also had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in that role with the adults. I always had a lot of interaction with the adults. The difference in a school, if I can I keep, is this all right if I just kind of
Yeah, I'm curious, actually. I was going to ask, when you say it was exhausting, I don't know if the role of psychologist was exhausting or working within a system. And I know
I
about
think
this.
it's the psychologist role was not necessarily as exhausting as the administrative role. It's kind of all consuming. And I still had children at home, and I wasn't necessarily taking as good care of myself because I was working 12 hours a day and driving to work 45 minutes, and it left no time for any quality of life. And my body was beginning to say to me, "What are you doing?" And I think it continues to speak louder to us until we listen. So I left without really a solid plan of what I was doing, and had a friend suggest that I pursue the kind of work that I'm doing now. I took that leap of faith, and
About how long ago was this?
9 or 10 years,
Thank you.
9 years, took that leap of faith and started with that person as a referral partner, which was very helpful, and have really built something that I enjoy. I started with just doing just the school advocacy piece and kind of had a framework by which I did that I felt was really, I've always had that, as you talked about in my bio, that we have to not only make the school do what we want, but we have to, as a parent, understand and engage the child. The research on motivation is so compelling that if we don't engage children in being part of the process, we don't get their help to solve the problems. They're their problems, and we don't get their voice. We can do a lot of dumb things to kids if we don't ask their opinions.
You are not the sum of your earnings. You are the sum of your yearnings. If you're ready to use wealth to create more freedom and flexibility, let's align your finances with what matters most. Together, we'll build a plan that balances your scarce resources of energy, time and money so you move forward with clarity, confidence, and less stress towards a life of true abundance. Learn more at www.trueabundanceadvisors.com and schedule a short conversation. I heard a number of things. You've said many times that you enjoy working with children. Now, children encompasses a wide diversity of ages. So is there, number one, a specific age group? And then as you answered that, you're talking about advocacy. And I kept hearing when you said it was exhausting, I wasn't sure if the politics of school systems was exhausting or just the pure administrative tasks. And now you're doing advocacy, which says to
Probably
me,
both.
part
Probably
of you.
both. I think it was also, I was in a position where the superintendent was a little unreasonable, having spoken with, knowing what my boss, who'd been in the role I was in before, had accomplished over 10 years. There were some unreasonable expectations. I'm the child of someone who ran their own business, and I'm not necessarily the biggest traditionalist. So I was saying to myself before that in life, do I really want to be in the system my whole life? Is that really how I see my story? And this has allowed me to expand. So my favorite age I do like children, but now that I'm not a young person myself anymore, I think that age range has expanded because there's lots of people younger than I am that I've been through the experiences that they have. And my coaching work really is for, like, I start that upper elementary, but I do have adult clients as well who are either
Oh,
there for
interesting.
themselves or who are there for parenting suggestions, maybe a little bit of both. I have some young adult work that I do. Advocacy work is all ages. And it isn't even really just advocacy. There's a lot of advising. So I help families with really not just so advocacy is not a protected term. Anyone can say they're doing it. So oftentimes parents will come and say, this is what I want, and then the person will go and get it for them or try to get it for them. Not necessarily think they do, but I help them figure out, do they want the right things?
I love that.
And again, certainly it still remains their choice. I have the experience in schools to help them understand what's going to move the needle. How do we look at your child at 18 and their readiness? What are their goals? I was on the texting with the mom of a young man I work with today, and my compelling comment to him last week was, I'm worried that as you look at your classes for next year, are you going to be frustrated if you don't take the rigor that your siblings did? I think sometimes as an adolescent, it's hard to have a perspective outside ourselves and understand our decisions and the consequences of a greater world. So it's helpful to have someone, it's not my decision to make, but he looked at me as, no, I want to be able to do what my siblings are doing. I'm like, okay, so let's think about how we get there.
You mentioned, Nancy, that of course your experience being in the school system helps you as you advise children, parents, different age groups, and help them advocate for themselves. What other skills, particular to you, both help you enjoy this work and as you enjoy the work, do it?
I definitely think it's the knowledge. I think I have kind of an agile mind at looking at lots of information and putting it together and finding the important pieces. I think so. I've started meditating, and for anyone, I have no stake in the game in this other than to share what's something that makes me happy. I do the Sam Harris Waking Up app.
Oh, me
Um,
too.
and I do it, I think I sent it to you.
Yes.
And I pitch it to everybody, not to say you're not important, Laura, but I do think it's helpful, and share it with friends because you can send a free month to people. And one of the kinds of meditation he talks about is meta meditation, which is sending good energy out into the world. And I was like, okay, I kind of try and do that all the time. Don't people do that? So I think I just I like lifting other people up. That brings me joy. One of the things as I've gotten older that I'm mindful of is making sure that I include myself in that group of people, that I do things, that I take time to stop and appreciate that and do it for myself as well. And not that it's doing for other people does it, but also to take time to walk my dog, or I have a pretty pond to sit out this morning and look at it and appreciate the blue heron when he comes to visit, walk with my husband in the woods. I don't know. I don't know if I answered. I just enjoy it, and I think people can tell. I'm a big aficionado. When I wrote my master's thesis, or not my thesis, excuse me, my qualifying exams, one of the questions that they ask is, now that you've taken this coursework and you've done the practice work, what do you see as your approach to counseling? And I said that I was a Rogerian rational emotive therapist, which if there's anyone who's has this understanding of that, they're laughing, hopefully, because they're sort of contrary. But the way I put them together was I try and be genuine, be trustworthy, and show unconditional positive regard. That's the Rogerian piece. But the rational emotive therapy piece is that in that format, I call them like I see them. And so I try and do it, and certainly there's a time and a place for that, but it doesn't mean I just sit and listen. I have ideas and things to help you move forward.
Yes, and what I'm hearing is as you guide people to make the right decisions for themselves, you are pointing out things they can appreciate about what is already transpiring for them. If that was the first piece, the positives, as opposed to going in, and this is very true in my field, of fix it, like this is broken, let's fix it. Obviously, they're coming to you because they feel like something needs to change and be fixed. And yet, it's important to make them aware of what is already working. Am I understanding that
Well, I
correctly?
think it's the positive way. The Rogerian piece is more of your presentation in the positive way that you present to them. But I think that we all have to, yes, there can certainly be, when we look at problems, the research is that solutions come from strengths. Our compensatory skills come from finding strategies that work for us. And research based, there's strategies that work for everyone, but certainly we always customize them for ourselves. But it doesn't work I don't handwrite everything because my handwriting is not great. I type because people can read my typing. There is no sense in continuing to spend time on my handwriting. It's not a good use of time. So I'm often saying to parents at this point in time, I'm honestly saying to parents, I'm interested in your child learning to voice type because I think that's really where we're all headed.
Very true. You're reminding me of Strength Finders, right? Which is a test one can take to see what your strengths are because of the idea that you just shared, Nancy, which is identify your strengths and then work on those to make them even stronger as opposed to looking at your weaknesses. And at some point, that's not, it's often going to continue to be a weakness. You may sharpen it, but really working on your strengths is a good use.
And you can, and you have to go back to sort of the underlying task. So I was thinking, I don't want anybody to think who doesn't lift weights that I think you can't go and learn how to lift weights if you can't do it now. It's the underlying skill. So back to the penmanship, computer, the underlying skill we're trying to really accomplish is communication.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's really helping people focus on what's really the goal versus what's the manner in which we accomplish it, which sometimes people they don't they can't differentiate that. There's a lot of that comes from instructional design and curriculum development, kind of thinking about things that way. What are you really trying to accomplish?
Thank you. Nancy, if there are listeners who are thinking, I really could use some help, either myself or with my child, what else do you think is important for them to know about you? Certainly, all your links will be in the show notes, but about you and your work and who it's best for.
Anyone who's invested in working on helping their child improve, and I think there needs to be some kind of issue that you're concerned about, or that's usually what brings people to me is their child has some kind of learning difference or attentional issue or social skills issue that they're concerned about them managing. And I take on a number of, I have clients who seek me out and stay with me for varying amounts of time. I have some people who dip in. I heard from a mom last week. Her daughter has dyslexia. We were able to get her extra time, which significantly in high school, which significantly reduced her anxiety, improved her grades. She's gotten into the college she wants to get into. Her grades are all A's. That's pretty much all it took. But when they'd gone to the school themselves, it hadn't worked.
Interesting.
I have kids I work with over time who I advise their families and help them understand about schools because there are issues that require sort of ongoing support. And the schools there's many people in schools are good, but the demands are high, the resources are low. And often parents say to me, how does anybody do this without you? Like, how do you do this alone? Because I didn't understand half of what they just said. And then the kids that I work with and young adults and adults that I work with over time, I think it's really about we're identifying the goals that first are the initial problems of practice. And then we're sort of looking over time, both development wise and what are the next skills to accomplish. I've got a family that I work with, a child. We've been working together since kindergarten, and we very bright, some learning issues, and we've done a lot of parenting work on how do I not parent the way I was parented because I didn't like it, and how do I learn the skills, and how do I manage that moving target? That children, as Laura, as a mom, as they certainly are, that they evolve and you just get them figured out and something else happens. You're
Yes.
like, wait, now what do I do? I think I keep busy. I keep busy, but I have time to walk my dog and talk with my friends and work out and meditate and enjoy life.
So I'm hearing you say, Nancy, obviously it still stuck with me when you first started the business that the woman who recommended became a referral partner. So you didn't go into this entrepreneurial part of your career with, oh, it will just all work out. You had a plan, you thought about who could help you build the business, because I'm saying that out loud for our
Yeah.
listeners who may be thinking about taking a similar leap of faith. And I'm also hearing that it allows you to have a work-life balance that you didn't have before.
And it allows me autonomy to create a business that's the vision that I want it to be. I've been blessed. I'm going to say my assistant, Indy, because I adore her. I won't say her last name because she'd yell at me. Uh, love you, Indy, very much. Who were very aligned in our values. I always share the successes with her because it's happy to be doing this work being part of this work for families. Every once in a while, someone who I don't know will say to me, gee, can you teach me how to run they'll just cold email me and say, can you show me how to do what you do? And it's, no, I'm sorry, but that's not a business model for me. And I don't really have the life energy to do it. What I've started saying to them is that you need to remember that you're running a business. And we haven't really talked about that because we talked about the focus of the work, but there is a business being run. There's accounting to be done, there's payroll, there's incorporation to be managed. We had a new business form that I don't know, I think we didn't end up having to file, but I filed because I was tired of waiting. And there are you're working with clients, so you're establishing what your routines are so that you support your clients. There's many pieces to, as
Yeah.
you've done this as well, that are I've tried to be as thoughtful as I can in developing a business as well. And I think I probably say that with a little back to your word of pride. I do take a little bit of pride in that because I'm certainly not making seven figures in what I'm doing, but my business is doing well and it's at the right scale for me and what I want. And we've continued to do it with integrity.
Great word.
It's a
I'm
good word
hearing,
for you too.
Nancy, and this is a through line, that you put, as I know, running a business, you've put systems in place, processes. You said you had notes for this conversation, so I'm not surprised that you are aware of the nuts and bolts of running a business, whereas some people may feel, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's true of a lot of entrepreneurs that you're like, I'm just going to hang out a shingle and I'll meet people and I'll have clients. And that's true at the beginning where you get a handful of clients. But then when you have a prospering business, you need more than that. You need an assistant that you could depend on. You need to be
Or
aware
referral partners who
of what's
value you and remember you and appreciate you. My work is, I don't do any marketing. Like it's all people hearing about me from other parents or other clinicians. It's not I have done things where I've done that and I'd love to do more outreach. It's always time. As you talked about, we only have so
Yes,
much time.
exactly. So, as we get towards the end of our conversation, Nancy, I always like to explore how your definition of success have shifted. I've heard a little bit of it in your comments, and perhaps even your definition of financial success.
I think it was being successful in an organization and being a good bureaucrat at a certain point. And I have proudly let that go. And now I define success as more autonomy, creativity,
Mm.
flexibility. I have a very millennial Gen Z definition of success, I feel like. And I think they're so wise to look at all of us who are sitting comfortably in these big houses we don't want to leave and saying, do you really need that much space? And is that what I want to be doing with my life? I want time. I want time to relax. I think that's success. I want time. He'll never listen to this, so I can safely say my son won an award at work the other night, and I was very proud of him. And success to me was that at 10:30 at night when he called me, I didn't have to say, I have to get up at 5:30 to get to my big job. I was able to stay up with him and talk and sit and think about it afterwards and not I have the time for that. I think success is continuing to find something I'm doing that has value for people. I was out for coffee with a friend who we talked about someday when I don't want to work. She was pitching nonprofit ideas to me that I could do. And I said to her, maybe I could do that now. And she lovingly said, no, I don't think you can.
Oh,
I think that you don't have time. And I think I know you want to, but I don't think you have time. I want to continue to contribute and have value. I think that's the thing. I don't know if you have this thought as we age, am I just going to be sitting in my house doing nothing? Is how do I continue to, there's a lot that I have to share at this point in time. How do I continue to both have the opportunity to give it to people and help them and have the pleasure of doing that? That will be what success and to be healthy, to
ah,
balance that with being
yeah.
healthy.
Yeah, so much of what you just said resonates with me. I think we're both lucky to have skills that really help others. And the challenge that we both have, that maybe you're managing a little bit better than me, is to also carve out time for oneself so that as we age, we can continue to do this work. And whether that's from where I am, which is learning to delegate better, learning to say no to opportunities that come our way, or having friends that say no for us, in your case, because the skill set is needed. In your case, advocating, helping people deal with struggles and challenges in academics and other learning areas. In my case, helping people deal with the challenges of aligning finances with who we are and what we want to achieve in our lives. And so it's nice to have a skill that is useful.
And just to give another idea too for you and anyone else who's sort of in our stage of life, I've taken over the role of, I'm grateful to have given the opportunity to be our volunteer coordinator at our local farm, which is a very vibrant community, beautiful people, multi-age. Someone I've spoken to about financial planning said to me, "You don't want to be the Walmart greeter when you're 80." And my husband started laughing and he said, "She kind of does." If that's where life led me, that I needed to do something, if somebody's going to let me smile and say hi to people, okay, I'll be okay with that. If that's all I've got left to contribute, that's okay. Because I will probably have candies in my pockets or Dum-Dums lollipops for the little kids and talk to the regulars, and I'm saying that about the farm is I want to make people feel welcome. So I think there's ways to take the skill set of the things that bring you joy, even if it's not in your work, and carry it on.
Beautifully said, Nancy. I feel so privileged to have met you and to see you in action with other women that are involved in our group. And you're such a giving person of yourself, of your skills, of your emotions, of your emotional support. And it has really come through in our conversation. So
Thank you. I feel like I should say some things that I'm not good at to kind of balance this out.
no, that's not your role. Thank you so much for making the time
Thank
for the
you.
conversation, Nancy. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.